when you really think about that statement, like you're going to die. So what are you going to do between now and then? Are you going to complain? Are you going to produce? Are you going to create? Or are you going to consume? You know, what are you going to do between now and then? I love Wichita now because it is a city of opportunity. And I think the best way I could describe it is it's almost like that startup that is just on the cusp of like exploding into growth and amazing things happening. And we're right on that catalyst and that cusp.
All right, I'm here at the Il Primo location at Central Woodlawn with Jason Toevs. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Landon. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. Thanks for coming on. If you just want to real high level, introduce yourself. Who are you? How do you introduce yourself to people?
Oh man, it really just depends on the crowd and the time of day, right? No, my name's Jason. I am the co-founder and CTO for Quicc. We're a local Wichita startup. We actually do captions on video and audio content that goes out to social media. So if you're a marketer or if you're a content creator making video, we help you add captions so that they're more accessible and they can drive better results for your campaigns.
Perfect. And I had used that actually. So
that's awesome.
In the beta version. So
yeah,
I'm sure it's even better now than it was then.
Oh, so man. It's so fun adding new things every single week to that platform.
That's really cool. And we will definitely dive into that pretty deep. But going back, where are you from? Where do you grow up? I know you lived in Australia or something for a while, so tell us a little about that.
Yeah, so originally my mom's from Australia, and she ended up marrying a Kansas wheat farmer. So my brother and I, we grew up here, just north of town actually. And we started off kind of doing the like cash crop, small farm type of farming. We only ever managed around 1,000 acres. So it's a lot, but not a ton when you're farming, I suppose. And after a while, Dad decided he didn't want to have to be busy all year round. Multiple harvests and just a lot of stuff, and it was just him and us as boys growing up. And so we switched to doing hay, so providing high quality premium hay for horse markets. Eventually got into the zoos, so the family farm actually still does all of the local zoo contracts. So we got Sedgwick County Zoo.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, Kansas City Zoo, we do hay contracts up there, and then also out in Colorado Springs. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That is really cool, yeah.
We get to see giraffes and feed lions and do.
That's gotta feel good too. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. My cousin runs and operates that day to day.
Still going?
Yeah, he does a great job with that, and it's pretty cool.
Awesome. How often do you visit Australia?
My wife and I, and now our new baby Shiloh.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. We've gone every year, some years a couple times, just to see family, and for us, it's one of those easy places to go back to. It feels comfortable, like it feels like a second home, and it's probably some of the best beaches that we've ever.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Bondi Beach, I think, is one of them.
Yeah, Bondi down in Sydney is pretty amazing. We go to the Sunshine Coast, just north of Brisbane, actually. And it's one of those smaller towns. I mean, it's probably around the size of Wichita. It's spread out. They've got beautiful beaches, an amazing culture there. A really interesting smart city going in, actually. For like 53 hectares of their city center that was a golf course that they just decided to rip up. So they started from nothing. They get to build their whole brand new, their brand new CBD. So they have their central business district.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Smart robots and vacuum trash and all
future forward. Yeah.
Pretty much.
That's really cool. So what is it like then? So you're in tech now from farming. What guided you that way? Were you always into tech?
I was always kind of the nerd.
Yeah.
I was always kind of the computer guy in our family and with my friends at school. But it was definitely cleaning out grain bins on the weekends, or like just those chores that teach you a lot. And instill character, as my dad used to say. But realizing that there was a bigger passion, and ultimately that actually kind of branched out of my goals. Going into college to be a secondary education techer in mathematics, seeing kind of the state that teaching was in and where it was going at that point in time, and knowing that I could not like deal with a lot of the red tape and the bureaucracy that I saw there. So I just kind of figured that at that point I wanted to educate people in a different way, and a lot was going to be based off of real life experience. So diving in as an entrepreneur and like building things and failing and figuring some things out along the way.
Right.
And then, after a certain amount of time, and I don't think that I'm there yet, if and when I have value to bring to others, be able to share that and help them in areas that I wish I would have known going in early on. So I've had some amazing mentors and teachers along the way in that process. But I think that being a practitioner first means a lot.
Sure.
And it allows you to speak from experience and being young like yourself, like having a few gray hairs, I think will help that implement a long vision.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think it's something? So obviously you want to kind of teach as you go. You get more experience, teach more people. Is there a long-term vision for that? Like some kind of a school that's not like school today or anything like that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And in fact, so for me, one of the life vision, if you will, is for me, I believe that my role is to help inspire others to realize their true potential. I had parents who did that with me, and were really awesome at giving me a great childhood, and it's something I know a lot of people don't have for one reason or another. And I really want to learn as much as I can about the application of, entrepreneurship or starting small businesses. Right now with Quicc, it's really focused on creators, right?
Yeah.
So creating content, creating value for others, whether it's through a software, whether it's through a YouTube video, and then how do you create a lifestyle that allows you to do what you love to do every single day, create value, to be creative, and the internet's really enabled that. And I want to ultimately, whether it's maybe in some version of Quicc a few years down the road, and we're bigger and we can do more with our community, I would love to do that with them even through that vehicle. But if not, I really want to have a school that helps those who are leaving high school or maybe in high school, and college isn't the right next step for them. Like almost a trade school for creators, if you will.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I think there's a lot around the tech startups and the entrepreneurial ecosystem that isn't software developers. It's the graphic designers, it's the video production creators, and how do they touch technology and understand code and work in the no-code movement that's coming up now. And there's a lot of really interesting things.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
I do think even college is, one, the price of it is kind of ridiculous right now. Yeah. And two, just like for engineers, doctors, like yes, they need to go to school, they need to learn the science behind the stuff, they need to do it. But like you said, like there's a lot of stuff like, yes, a graphic design degree could be valuable, but in those 4 years, what you could learn, you could probably go there and beyond, start a company, fail, do whatever, and learn a lot more. So.
Well, and I was thinking to myself, if I was really fortunate in the opportunities that I had with school, choosing community college right at the gate meant that I didn't really have any student loans from that. I did spend a year at a private school and worked my butt off to pay those dues back. But then even going to school like WSU, where it wasn't nearly as expensive as a private school, and I think if you're intentional about the process and understanding, and I was really fortunate, and my parents really ingrained in us, like, you're paying for school. Yeah. Like,
I think that's powerful too.
Yeah, we're farmers, like, you guys just have to figure it out. And that was really helpful because I was always thinking about what impact does, if I'm taking out a $2,800 student loan or $5,000 student loan, what impact does that have? How fast can I pay that back off so that I'm not spending 40 years in something that I have to do because I have to pay this back? And so I think that that's something that I would really encourage any student, no matter where you're at in school, is understand the impact of, if you're going to go through a 4-year degree, what's that going to cost you, and what's the impact on paying it back, right? As a math major, you're doing the math every day. You're like, I understand what interest does and compounding interest, and if I had $50,000 before college to go and either spend on college or go and invest in the stock market or go and invest in a business, the lowest return on your investment, in my opinion, for a lot of trades is putting it to school. So I think you can learn a lot more, and that's my personal self, and I know that there's others who school is the right choice. secondary education like that is really important.
Yeah, definitely. So you get your degree, finish your degree?
So there's an interesting story. I
thought there was. So.
Yeah, I got married to my beautiful wife, Shelby, and we got married in 2010.
Okay.
She was 18, I was 20. So got
Really
married.
young?
Yeah, got married really young. And we'd been together for years through high school. We were high school sweethearts. And
we are as well. So.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you know, like.
Oh yeah, I know how it goes. Yeah, we were pretty young too, so.
It's the best, and also you have to grow up together and be graceful through that process
100%.
with one another. So we met in school. She got her certification as a hairstylist.
Okay.
And she was doing hair, kind of paying the bills while I was in school. And kind of the agreement that we came to was, I would make sure that she didn't have to worry about having a job after that, right?
Sure.
So like, hey, for this period of
trade-off,
time, hey, for a couple of years, help me get through school, and like, I'll be the sole breadwinner for the house if that's what you want, right? If you want to continue, great, let's do it. But I don't want you to have to do that,
right?
And so we kind of struck up that deal, pretty informally, but it was always in my mind. And then starting my first journey into web design actually happened pretty shortly after we got married, about a year and a half after we got married. And so I started figuring out web design and learning the code and learning graphic design, which was a huge part of what I did. I did freelance web design for about 6 years.
Wow.
About 2016, mid 2016.
Okay.
And it was a blast. I learned a lot. I think my favorite process along the way was the realization that I was a mediocre graphic designer, but really great at systems and processes to enhance that workflow.
Yeah.
Then I had a short opportunity to work with a company out in San Jose, managing a developer team and designing and building product for them, software as a service product, SaaS product. That went pretty well. I learned a lot through that process. Made mistakes. Fix things, learned how to manage international teams, but at the end of the day, it taught me a lot about how to build product for driving value. Yeah. And then, it was kind of also the entry point into the startup world, where you got to raise money to build a company, and that's where I landed with Alice and Quicc. So.
Awesome. So what kind of product was that in San Jose?
It was actually an online education platform for continuing educational units in the medical space, so for adults who are taking care of adults with disabilities, they need continuing education credits, and we were building the platform to serve that up. And before, a lot of it was way easier to do now, but even back then, it was really interesting working with the state of California to get it all certified and oh man, I tell you what, there's a lot of red tape in that process, but it taught me a lot about working with governmental organizations and how to navigate some of those.
Good knowledge for future projects. And
don't build a SaaS platform in California for medicine.
Okay, noted. I'll mark that one off.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. So going back to kind of the development of web development, how you got into that. What languages did you learn? Like, what was your progression? How did you get into that? Because I've dabbled in programming. I went to engineering school, and so we did a little bit of programming. I've done a little bit on my own, but what was your experience? What languages? How did you do that?
Yeah, it was weird because I had done some HTML work in school and just really basic stuff in coding, to be honest. And for me, it was this interesting intersection of, some of the early platforms to what I would call what's taking off now is the no-code movement, which is more the drag-and-drop designers, the Wixes of the world, the Squarespaces of the world, like those types of platforms. But even like with Webflow now, which is also a competitor in the same space, this idea that you can connect the databases, you can have full infrastructure, that you can actually build SaaS companies without knowing any code.
Right.
So they're trying to, because it's only 1 in 400 people in the world that can understand and read code.
Wow.
Unless they can really write it well.
Right.
And so imagine if there's only 1 in 400 that can read English or can read the native language. It'd be really hard to communicate. And so kind of throughout the years, I became fairly proficient around HTML, CSS, kind of the front end coding languages, JavaScript to some degree. But really for me, I was way more interested on the business case for a company. So I was delivering websites in 9 weeks at the beginning.
Wow.
I got that down to 1 day.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And in most cases, it was actually about 6 hours, 6.5 hours.
That's unreal.
And you can't do that if you're writing every line of code. Like you have to use some of these drag and drop designers, which for the clientele I was working with in the wedding photography industry, it was a perfect solution.
Sure.
Right? It fit everything that they needed, and it taught me a lot about, when do you go deep into code for, kind of a custom integration for a client? Okay, like, that's what you need to do. And when do you use something that provides high impact for low cost?
Right. So, do you use one of those products? Do you use like a Squarespace or WordPress, or what did you use before or now?
I used, so I initially got started on WordPress. And then I really got plugged into a platform called Showit, which is actually really kind of industry specific for photographers.
Okay.
And then after that, like what I would use now, it would be Webflow. I'm really interested about their whole, because they've really fused, like you get to learn enough about code and how websites are built and divs and styling for all of that. But at the same time, they take a lot of the drag and drop design tools that you need to work fast and to like.
Yeah, I haven't looked at that at all.
Yeah, Webflow is really interesting. It can be really intimidating if you're coming in like as a graphic designer.
Yeah.
Or as a coder, it kind of feels like this is limited. And I don't really know if I can do the things that I want to do with this thing, but I feel like it's probably been the best marriage of kind of those two worlds.
Nice.
And I mean, their CEO is really passionate about the no-code movement. There's SaaS companies that are generating 25, 30K monthly recurring revenue.
That's incredible.
And they're built on Webflow.
Yeah.
So
I'll have to check that out. Right now we're built on just the Wichita Life website is on WordPress. And I've used Squarespace for a couple things before. So I've dabbled a little bit, but nothing too in depth, but I'll definitely have to check that one out. That's cool.
Yeah, and I mean I think it would take a little bit of time to get it to really where you want it. But I think some of the things that they're doing is really creative and they have a cool product roadmap.
That's really cool.
So.
One thing we talked about last time we grabbed coffee, world travel. Can you tell a little bit about that? Like how
it's all a podcast in itself, man.
I'm sure. Well, we might have to have a part 2 about that then too. But
no, world travel was really something that Shelby and I just kind of randomly landed into. Other than we had the connection to Australia, so like right away, like we were going to Australia to see family, like. We had kind of a second wedding reception down there for my mom's side of the family and aunts and uncles and cousins. But we love traveling together, especially through the freelance design years. Like it was really easy because I could build a website in a day. Like it didn't matter where in the world I was. I could just block out the time and build the site, knock it out. There's $3,000 in your pocket. Okay, travel for another few weeks. Like have the next website that you do, and just keep going.
Yeah.
So the geo arbitrage here was pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And especially when you're in less expensive countries than the U.S., but you have U.S. clients, and so like I get $3,000 U.S. That's maybe the equivalent of like $5,000 in Poland or somewhere else. So we did. I think 2015 was our big travel year. We did 150 some days out of country.
That's
just
amazing.
China, all over Europe, Australia, like just seeing the world and having fun together before we had kids. And a lot of that was based out of a story that we do like to share, which is our struggle in becoming parents. And it took us 7 years to really become parents. And we actually ended up doing that through embryo adoption, which is really interesting, and if you've never heard of it, you should definitely check it out. But it's couples who have gone through IVF. They donate their embryos for other couples to adopt, essentially.
Wow.
And then, like Shelby she gets the embryo implanted, similar to how IVF works, but it's somebody else's. Like it's another couple's full genetic. So there's
that's
genetic
crazy,
parents and biological parents. Like we're technically the biological parents, but they're the genetic parents. Like it's a really it's a beautiful story. She tells it really well on her Instagram account. So.
Okay, I'll have to check it out. I think was there an article about that?
Yeah,
I think I read the article. Yeah.
Yeah, we're in the Newton, Kansas.
Yeah.
We had a friend write that up, and
it's incredible.
It was really cool.
That takes a lot of faith. That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've had a fantastic relationship with the genetic parents, just communicating back and forth, and we haven't met them in person yet. We hope to do that soon. But Shiloh will know as early as she can remember that she does have genetic parents and other genetic siblings. I mean, it's really important for medical data, just for that matter. But also, we want to tell that story. And we want to let her know how much they loved her, and they couldn't, like, she had complications with their kids, so they couldn't have more kids, and even though they had fertilized embryos from IVF. And so it's a beautiful story. So she'll have cousins, embryo cousins, which are
really
full
cool.
genetic siblings, right? In other states around the country. So
that's crazy. Yeah, that's really cool. I think it's cool to talk about that too, because before you guys, I don't think I've ever heard of that, or nobody that I've known or talked to. So I think it's important to get that out, because I know a few couples that have struggled and gone through IVF and luckily got pregnant. But
Well, and I will say, if there's anyone who ends up listening to this podcast and hasn't ever heard of it, or maybe they're looking at IVF, feel free to reach out to me or my wife. We're huge advocates for embryo adoption. We had a great experience. The laws and rules and regulations around it are very protective of the biological parents. That would be whoever's adopting the embryos. The genetic parents are the ones who ultimately had that first round of IVF. But really, just the whole process was great, and it's so much cheaper than IVF.
Really? That's interesting.
A lot cheaper.
I've heard IVF is super expensive, but I didn't. Wow.
Yeah, so it's probably 1/5 the cost of IVF.
Wow.
So if you're, especially if you just can't afford it for whatever reason, or don't want to go through the pain and the hassle that can come from IVF, it's a really good option.
All right, that's cool. Yeah, I'll link up your contact information for sure in case anyone wants to reach out. So, so just hopping back real quick to some of the website stuff. How would you get those clients? Because it's kind of like you could pick a client whenever you kind of wanted to. So how was that? Did you have a waiting list? What did that look like?
So once it took me about two and a half years to figure out that the 9-week turnaround and juggling 7 clients at a time just was bad for me, bad for the clients. Like, nobody liked it. It was kind of the same old model. But I was serving clients that wanted custom websites, and not a template, or just a redesign, throw together thing. So first of all, I started every site from scratch, which probably I could have built in more efficient ways to do that. But that was really important to me, to provide that value, because that's what the clients were paying for. And the beautiful part about it was working with wedding photographers. They're used to a date on the calendar in which they go and perform their work, and they get paid up front usually for that date, and maybe some afterwards. But really, they're performing on the day, and so having this business model that worked really well to what they were used to, they could conceptualize, okay, like, my site's getting built next Thursday, like, I'm paying $3,000 for that day, I'll make that up in my next wedding. So if I generate one more lead that I wouldn't have and can convert that, like, then it's worth it. So the business case worked really, really well. And it was easy for me to stack 4 or 5 up and have them go through the automated content gathering process that I had built, which was, really, honestly, the secret sauce to it. As I could wake up to a Dropbox brief, and I had, the mood board that they had helped generate and collect from the questions and guidance that I had automated in kind of an automated questionnaire. Had all the photos, I had all the copy, I had the site map, like, it was all generated. So I just woke up and, like, spend an hour reading through the brief, hop on Skype with them for an hour, 30 minutes even, just make sure we're on the same page. get to work building, get that first draft back to them in the afternoon.
Right.
And we just go through it page by page, and I could edit live right in front of them, so they get to see.
That's incredible.
Wow, like he knows his stuff, and that might take me way longer, and
wow,
and then it's just
awesome.
done. Right? Yeah. And they say, okay, great, like this is awesome. That's all I need. You know, you provide a couple weeks of support afterwards if there's questions or things that they want to tweak, but very rarely do they have that.
Yeah. It's a very 4-hour work week, Tim Ferriss style.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's parts of me that wish I could reboot that, knowing everything that I know now, and be able to work with others who want to enjoy kind of that same process and workflow. I didn't really know how to grow that or scale that.
Right.
I mean, I just knew maybe because you have to have a very specific drive. And you have to work in pressure very well. Yeah. Otherwise, you get 4 hours in, you get stuck on something, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to finish this. Or, it's not that I didn't have those thoughts, but I could just process through that and
push through it,
and get it done.
Sure.
And so there's only one site that took more than 10 hours. It took 16. That was a long day, but we got it done. And there was one site that I did 4, so that was kind of the the fastest and the slowest. But I really enjoyed that. It taught me a lot about myself. I got to really be introspective about who I am and what I'm passionate about, what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, and then take that into all the other things that I get to do in my life.
For somebody that might be listening that's like, that sounds awesome, I want to try that. Is there, I mean, just for that specific instance, I mean, you can obviously branch off of that.
Sure.
Is there still a market for that type of stuff right now? Or is with the Squarespaces that somebody could build it themselves now, do you think that's not as...
Oh no, because I mean, even when I was doing that, I mean, the market may have matured a little bit in the sense that there's just more awareness of that. But the majority of my clients were ones who had tried it on their first take, and they're like, I don't have the time for this.
Makes sense.
I don't know. And so I would say the most important thing, the best place to start is to find a community that you can bring value to, real, true value. I spent the first, I would say the first year, first 6 months to a year before gaining any significant income. I mean, there's small projects here and there, but nothing like, I'm in full time, honey, you know, like this is the thing. I spent about a year just being helpful, adding value into groups where I could add value. So for wedding photographers, it was just, you know, learning everything I could about graphic design, what design works to help convert to sales, or, you know, how do you leverage SEO, and just learning and absorbing, and then almost providing value where you're qualifying and saying like, hey, I read this article yesterday. I think here are the highlights that I took away from it. And not posing to be this guru that's expert or somebody who like has it all figured out, because you don't. Like, you spent 4 months in Google searches, and, you know, just reading stuff. And I think it's just being okay with understanding what your time is worth, and then growing throughout that process. So I think the first website I ever did was $800, and I spent a long time on that site. But the client loved it, and if your client isn't singing your praises at the end of the relationship, you either got a wrong client. They're not the ideal client for your company or your model, or even you as a person, or like you failed. And so you have to be honest with yourself, like, which one is that? I had to fully refund the client too, because we just didn't execute to what we needed to, and we had to fully refund her, and that was hard, but you learn a lot.
Learn to move on, live and learn. So jumping into some of the different ventures, as I was stalking you on LinkedIn, let's just kind of start at some of the older stuff and work our way forward. So I don't know what came first, but the first one I have listed is Made in the Lab. What was that?
So Made in the Lab was actually, there's a few of us web designers kind of in that same space, and we really believed in collaboration through this design community that we had, and so we started kind of a lower cost website template store that was Made in the Lab. It was show-based templates, and we're building that to be very similar to what you see in like Creative Market now, which we're going to sell you a subscription to a library of content. You get unlimited access to that content. We'll add content to it as we go. And so we kind of like preceded the store, like we got going with that and kind of offer great value to these early users.
Right.
And it was really targeting a demographic that was going to feed our custom development projects, and then we could just connect up with the designer that fit best.
Yeah.
So Rachel and Carrie were my business partners on that. They're both out of state. Rachel had a very complementary, well, both of them had complementary designs to what I was working on. Carrie was really the social media guru. Like she killed it on our social media. And Rachel was the other true designer. And so Rachel and I had no problem. Like, hey, this fits you. This one fits me. Like, let's just divvy it up that way. And it worked well, but I mean, we learn as you learn with any kind of platform like that or marketplace like that. The burden of creating content and like massive quantities of content to fill those stores, it can burn you out pretty quickly as a designer if it's just a couple of you working on it. So we ended up closing that after a little while. It wasn't live too terribly long, and we just were able to focus on what we were doing well with our own creative design.
Yeah, definitely.
So
very cool. And the next one you have listed is Faith in Hiring.
Yeah, so that's actually a local Wichita-based company. They're still around. I'm just honestly a minority co-founder, co-owner, I guess.
Sure.
But they do apparel for fitness. So all your gym
I looked up a little
rats.
bit. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's good stuff.
They're amazing guys. Danny and Jason, and then also Matt. They're really incredible dudes. And I was just the tech guy to get the store up and running and to build the website, and to help kind of support that. But you know, it's one of those. I mean, it's a tough. Apparel is really hard. And I don't do the day-to-day stuff, so like I only am like, observing and seeing like, okay, like managing all these units and then having a clear system and a process on the back end integrated with the website. I mean, places like Shopify make it so much easier than it used to be. And we moved to that a couple of years ago.
Really?
Just wait and see.
I bet that is.
We started on WordPress, and if you're doing an e-commerce site, Shopify is hard to beat.
Okay, good to know.
Hard to beat.
Definitely. I'll keep that in mind. Next is Toevs Ventures.
Toevs Ventures, yeah. So as a freelancer, you're always looking at having, when you're doing contract work, having an LLC in which shelters you personally. And that's kind of the entity that I use to do contract work, whether I'm doing like speaking gigs, I'm going to get 1099 from something, or if I'm doing just side hustle things, helping advise people on whatnot, if it's paid. I do a lot of non-paid stuff. But, I think that's it's really important to understand, like, you know, is that LLC or is an LLC classified as an S corp? You know, those things are things I was fortunate enough to have a business mentor in really early. That just walked me through a lot of that.
That's awesome.
And I'd be willing to talk with anyone who's got questions about that.
I'm sure I will at some point. We currently are incorporated under as an LLC. But I think that's the right thing for now. So again, that was me doing a little bit of Google reading.
I mean, it's like I always tell people I'm just dangerous enough on that front to say trust your accountant and trust your actual legal advisor. But, you know, if there's just big macro things like, oh, you know, how do I do this? Or what does that look like? And it's like, well, this is kind of the idea behind it. And then you got, at this point, take it to a lawyer. Take it to an accountant. They'll really make sure you don't get sued.
That's what I've been doing, hitting up the accountant, saying, hey, is this the right thing? So
see, those are areas in which going through that educational process for those specific degree paths is super important. Right? I want to trust my doctor, I'm going to trust my lawyer, I'm going to trust my accountant. Because those are big areas to mess up.
For sure. So the next thing started as one thing, kind of pivoted into another. Can you talk about Alice and Quicc?
Yeah, so I got connected with Mike Mathia here locally, who had spent 20 years as an HR executive for Donlier here in town. And he really had this idea for helping connect candidates who are looking for employment with the right employment. And not just based off of a resume which said, what have you done or where'd you go to school, but really sharing about who they are as a person and finding that match, because soft skills are so important. I mean, there's a lot of relationships, even between higher education and big employers here in town, in which the students go straight into kind of these like back office junk jobs to begin with, so that they can learn soft skills and the company can teach them like the company way. And for us, we were trying to connect those stories of resumes that would have been turned over normally, right? There's a difference maker who just has a bad resume, and so if you're going through a screening process and you turn that over, you miss a diamond in the rough. Or somebody who's got a great resume and then is just terrible and toxic to a team and costs you a lot of money. And learning that person's toxic and then creates issues down the track. So Alice was kind of this vision that Mike had of, can we take video content, video interviews, which was becoming more and more popular in the HR space, and can we mine those for the soft skills? So we were benchmarking to Big Five personality insights and just saying like, okay, positivity, articulation, confidence, energy, what's being displayed by these candidates in this area. And there's a ton of complex work that, I mean, to be honest, we were just too early to market for. And we didn't necessarily go super far down the R&D path for the machine learning and AI that was there. Like, there was some early work that we had done, worked with Michigan State University to do some studies on what we were working on. But ultimately, 12 to 18 month sales cycles, we were just getting some pilots, and really the pragmatic buyers that we were looking for just weren't there. So we had a choice to make, like, do we just go burn the investor capital that we had raised, educating the market and trying to hold out for that market to be ready? Or do we figure out how to narrow our product offering? So providing real value to some of the pilot partnerships that we had established and started working with. How can we really bring them value right now? And then also, what is the value outside using kind of that core technology or parts of it? What can we do beyond that? And that's really where I got to go and discover the incredible opportunity with Quicc, and just some of the connections that we had here locally in the marketing space. We got talking and we started seeing how much video content costs to create. It's time, it's specialty software, it's 4 microphones and big cameras, like, and even with phones today, like, if you want to produce a 1-minute clip out on social media with captions on it, it's going to take you 45 minutes using kind of the industry standards right now. To add to add captions to it through like Adobe Premiere, for example, or some of these video editors. And we basically were able to take kind of the core technology we had with Alice, which is already doing the transcription work, package it up as a SaaS platform, kind of build a video management component behind it, and we can deliver that same video with captions in less than 5 minutes. That's awesome. So, and all a user has to do is edit the last few words that we missed.
And like I said, I did I think it was just like a minute clip. So a good example of that one in the beta, and there was, just a handful of words I think that I had to, and that was because we had 8 different speakers. I had little clips of people talking, so it's all different ways of talking and everything. So that's pretty incredible.
It was really interesting to stumble across that need. And when you see a need like that very clearly, and there really wasn't a good answer in market. Like, there were some other apps and platforms that had been a couple years too early, I think, when captions weren't as neat. Like, to be honest, we were lucky that we hit it right at the right time. Like, it was the same time Google announced some of the work that they were doing with the deaf and hard of hearing around live captions that really complements our product really well on Android. And then just this importance of, there's 450 million people around the world who are deaf or hard of hearing who do not have the capability to engage with video content because creators can't or don't see the value in adding captions. And for us, we realize it's not because creators don't want to do it, it's because the time burden to do that just they wouldn't be around, a year from now if they had to go and caption every single video at that cost. And so we said, let's save creators time. And so now we're on this mission to save video content creators 1 billion minutes of time, to give it back to them. Let them be creative instead of just having captions.
Sure. And so I guess you kind of explained it, but how did you stumble across that specific thing? So I'm sure there was other problems or issues that people were. Why was it captions and video that stood out?
To be honest, it was actually going through the process of saying, all right, if I'm in the marketing space, and really at that point in time, it was about this time last year, I was analyzing the space, kind of seeing what a lot of our marketer friends were doing, and the whole video your podcast and then reuse it in multiple places all over social media.
Gary Vee approach.
Exactly, right? And Gary Vee was starting to get really, really hot on more content, like 15 pieces a day,
100 pieces a day.
Well, and the only way that you can do that with video content is if you can reduce the cost of creating that video content.
Right.
So this is where I started to analyze, okay, so what does it look like in a world where it's not just Gary Vee and his team, but it's all marketers are creating content at scale? Well, you have to know a couple things. Where am I going to find the content? Like if I've got pieces I'm reusing, where does it live? Where does it exist? What content should I create? Right? Because when you do 15 pieces a day, it's like, okay, now what? What do I do tomorrow? What 15 pieces do I do tomorrow? And then being able to essentially turn it, burn it, right? So you've got to create it on your device and deliver it from your device straight out into, a publishing platform to schedule it for later, or directly out into social media. Like you just can't afford to go through multiple people into a production team and into a workflow, and it would be way too cost prohibitive in that sense. So that's where we said, this is something that's missing right now in the market. There's not a good solution. There's a couple dead apps that are unsupported. They don't have anything changing with them. They're not really built for this specific use case. And so we just went after it.
So there's not a ton of competition right now, or
there's a couple competitors in the space. The biggest competitor, honestly, that we have is kind of a faster horses situation, which is I need a transcript for my video so that when I upload it to Facebook, I'm uploading a transcript along with it, or I'm trying to rely on Facebook or YouTube's kind of automated captioning process, which I can only tell you why our customers are coming to us, and it's because they've been frustrated with the inaccuracy of those platforms and the time it does take them when they hack it that way. And they say, I'd rather pay for a product, I'll pay for yours. It's true. So
I think it says, is it 92%?
Right around 91. And we caveat that based off of good quality audio. It's huge. And then we support 11 different language profiles. So each each language profile is going to be a little bit different on accuracy. So.
And so I guess just one step back, the core technology from LS to Quicc, what is that built on? Is that is that Python? What kind of language? Like how is that framework?
So we're a Python shop on the back end. And Python, and then we've got 2 incredible developers in house. And they're the ones who really built this thing. And we're able to use a lot of the core technology from Alice to, when we're basically benchmarking somebody's interview, we have to know what they're saying. So we took that piece and we said, okay, how can we repurpose this in a marketing vertical? And we kind of stumbled into this. And I think part of it is just seeing where the needs and the values for your potential clients exist, and then filling that, and filling it in a way that enables them to create more value out of it, right? So if you're filling a need, but then they can also leverage that. So for marketers, when we can give them captions, now they can sell that to their clients. Right? So they can meet the KPIs that their competitors can't, because I get better engagement with captions. I get a 16% increase on engagement just by using captions on average. Or I get a 26% increase on click-throughs on call to action just by using captions. And it's because you've done it, I've done it, everyone in the audience, you know that you've gone on social media and you scroll through feeds, and if you see a talking head on mute, you just scroll right past it. You've gone through Instagram stories and you swipe completely past the entire story if they're talking, because it's like, I don't know what you're saying.
Also, if you're in public or somewhere and you're like, I don't have headphones in, I'm not going to listen to this. And so,
in a meeting, you know, at work, you're
who would do that?
Laying in bed. I mean, but there's this opportunity. If you just add captions to it, you know what, like the important part of the whole video is the actual content of what is being said.
100%.
And so, we have some really cool visions for making life easier for creatives down the road. For, you know, what does Quicc look like? Because at the core, we're a video management system. We're managing people's content for them, and we're providing captions very fast, and can help them push more content out faster. So
definitely,
if you follow Gary Vee and you like creating videos, we're probably a good fit for you.
I listen to a lot of Gary Vee. So.
Me too.
I was going to ask your team. So the team at Alice, I'm not sure how many people there were. How much of that kind of converted into Quicc? Did some people decide to leave? What did that look like?
Yeah, it was a whole team that we were able to keep, and
That's
even
awesome.
add a couple more. So it's been really incredible seeing the core values that we had. With Alice, it was really around, we want to help tell the story of the individual applying for a job, right? And why are they better than somebody who has a more qualified resume? That same message is the message that we're carrying for creators, which is to be heard. And not only, it's the shirt I'm wearing right now, to be heard when you're in a noisy environment, and I say noisy kind of as a pun on things, because it's like, oh, it's on mute, or there's a bunch of other people just creating content. So I don't think we're at content at scale by any means yet. And if you've got, 20 million marketers who are all producing 100 pieces of video content a day, we're nowhere close to that. But all of a sudden, like, how do you cut through that noise? Can you do it without captions? I doubt it. And then when other people start using captions, and you have to use captions, it's kind of like, but then we kind of found this amazing community of the deaf and hard of hearing who, I never knew that I just
didn't know either.
It makes sense, but you don't think about that they just cannot engage with these new video-based mediums, because if there's not closed captioning, which you actually have to manually add as a creator, or if you are looking for captions burned in, like, there's very few people who actually do that. And so whether it's an entertainment video or an educational video, in the private sector, in the public sector, like, I mean, it's amazing the number of organizations that you would think would be required by law to produce captions
that's a good
on
point,
video, but they don't, because it's like, we kind of understand this is a huge problem. It'd be way more money than you could actually spend to do it. So just get better every year is kind of the offering that they have, and I mean, just it sucks. So,
for sure.
Yeah, we've learned a lot, and I've had my first meeting with the amazing women over at the Kansas Association of the Deaf. And I mean, we had a full interpreter and everything for the meeting, and that was my first experience, to be honest, and it was a really incredible experience. It taught me so much about this user group and this consumer group that we never really even thought of.
And that's really important for you to get, hands-on, meet the people that need, and the need is there the most.
Those are the best parts of my week. For sure.
That's really cool. So where do you fall on the quality versus quantity? I know Gary even recently has been talking a lot about quantity, how much you don't have to sacrifice quality for quantity, but what do you think that balance is?
So I'm going to harken a little bit back to my early days as a web designer. In the photography space, it really was, and I think it's kind of changed. The names have changed, but the idea is the same. Your biggest competitor as a professional photographer was not the professional photographer next to you. It was Canon, Nikon, and Sony telling everyone else out there in the world that all you need to do is spend $1,000 on a camera, and then you can be a professional photographer. That's not the case, not by a long stretch. But the idea is that it's the technology that you can point and shoot, and we have, super auto, we have AI in this hardware that can make it, and it's even worse now with phones, right?
Yeah.
Like the Google Pixel lineup and like the iPhone lineup. Like you can take great photos, right? But how do you go from great to like that premium experience?
Right.
How do you go from good to great, I should say? So you can take good photos with these devices, and in the same way, when you're creating content, you can produce good content, and you can do good content at scale.
Right.
You can't do great content at scale. When you think of an Avengers movie or like, you know, a cut for like these professional shoots, a Super Bowl commercial, like you can't do 100 of those.
Right.
You can't do 100 of them a week, let alone a year. But you can pick up a phone and record quality content that has an impact on a very niche group of people, and you can do it very fast.
Definitely.
And so I think I lean more into the way that technology has helped augment this sector. You can produce good content or good quality content at scale, and you don't have to do it's the 80-20 rule, right? 20% of your effort gets you 80% of the way there. The last 20% of your journey is going to take 80% of your effort. So trying to understand in this world where it's so easy to create content, your competition is so high now, anyone in the world can do it. And they can compete with your niche, your audience.
Right.
And I think this is where the produce more content that is more relevant and targeted to what you're talking about, and just skip all the fluff. And short form is really good, and like you can reuse it. You can take long form stuff and reuse quotes and things like
definitely.
that. But I probably line up with Gary's assessment of the world
for sure
in content creation more than anyone else.
Yeah, I can see that. While we're kind of on the Alice and Quicc, what is your thought on AI, artificial intelligence? Kind of where do you fall in that? Obviously, there's good use cases here, but like long-term, global scale, whatever. Are you on the Elon Musk, it's going to be the end of us, Terminator style, or where do you fall on that scale?
I mean, I have, now only 2 years of exposure to AI and what that looks like. The math behind it is really interesting to me. I think that AI is still very early in its assimilation into society. I do think AI is going to be able to do some powerful things in some really incredible sectors. I don't necessarily know. Maybe I just haven't been around long enough or in the game long enough to know what the ultimate impact could be. I'm probably not leaning so much in Elon's camp of like it's going to be the end of all of us. It's going to take over and just like nuke the world or something. I think that the important conversation to have right now is how do we build AI responsibly? And this was something we talked a lot about when we were working with Alice, is how do we make sure that we collaborate with the human component of any workflow and say, you know, here's the things that we as humans are bad at, sorting through giant data sets and trying to find patterns. We're not great at that, right? Distracted, we get bored, we make mistakes. So where the cost for an error is low, so if the AI makes a mistake, then okay, like it's fuzzy. Right? Personalities are fuzzy, right? Someday you're one thing, other days you're another thing. So we could afford to be less accurate on that. But like self-driving cars, for example, it's a bad day when your AI breaks on that. And so how do you build something in a responsible sense? And it's been incredible to see all the conversations that spur out of it. Like, hey, you know, who do you choose? And you know, when you've got a self-driving car versus a self-driving semi, right? If there's nobody in the semi, it's literally, you could essentially say, if you sense any possible collision with any other vehicle, just drive out into the ditch and crash the whole thing. Right? It might be an expensive mistake, but it's better than a life, right? Or even endangerment, right? But if it's self-driving taxis, it's like, okay, well, now there's lives inside of this unit, so I can't just drive off the road. Which is why I think like the autonomous trucking is probably a more realistic space than the autonomous taxis. I'm still holding out.
Okay, that's interesting though. What would you say to somebody that wants to start something? Maybe they're, college, high school age, or even, my age, whoever. then they want to start something, but they might not have that idea. They're like still trying to brainstorm and get that perfect idea. And I think a lot of people know it's more about the execution, but they don't know what to execute. Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where you're going to hear some of the Gary Vaynerchuk stuff come out. I am a huge believer in self-awareness. It's a journey that I got to kind of stumble through on my own, and learn about myself before truly like taking other people's money to go execute an idea. Super important. Go and try things, right? See what you like, see what you don't like, and be so hyper-focused on bringing other people value, because when you do that, you start to see the problems, you see the deltas, you see the difference, and saying like, all right, this group of people, they're missing this tool, they're missing this thing, and I could build that. You know, maybe I don't know exactly how to build it, but I could learn how to build that. And then all of a sudden you start having those ideas because you're looking for areas to create value. And I do think that like those true entrepreneurial individuals are always looking for opportunity, and it's where can I maximize this impact of opportunity with my skills, right? So being self-aware, where your limits are, who do you need to partner with, how can you build those relationships and continue to make value. So the only way that you find that is learning to be helpful to others and trying a lot of different things.
Sure. You might get a Gary Vee quote out of this one too, but would you recommend people, like you said, I mean, you said to be introspective and kind of know what you're good at, but would you recommend people leaning into those strengths then? Or like, say somebody's like, okay, I could learn to program, should I do that?
Yeah.
But where's that balance?
I think if it's something that you haven't tried before, just try it. Right? I mean, spend some time on it, see if you like it. For me, one of the things, it's an awesome business model with the one-day website stuff, but after doing 360 so sites, like, man, you get burned out. Like, everyone's asking for the same thing, you know, because they see your portfolio and like, I want that one but blue. You know, I want this site, but change your contact form up for a different font. And it's like, you just kind of, it's this weird process because you don't want to infringe on somebody else's site or creation that works for them, and you know that this specific individual like needs something different, but then you have to figure out how to convince them that they need something different. And so I think that trying different things is really, really important. And try as many things as often as you can to say like, all right, I gave this a good shot and I just was bad at it.
Sure.
And then know what success and know what failure kind of looks like or feels like for you. I think this is where having a good group of friends or mentors around you who can say like, honestly, you're really good at this, or honestly, you should hire this. You know, like hire for your weaknesses. I'm a huge advocate for hiring for your weaknesses.
Oh, absolutely. So just kind of some random questions I thought about. How do you organize your thoughts? So personally, I try to be organized. I've got a notebook, but then I end up with 50 sticky notes everywhere else. I've tried notes. How do you approach that? Because I feel like, especially for like a creative entrepreneur, you probably have a system.
I think the best thing that I have ever done is live by my calendar.
Okay.
Like I put as much as I can on my calendar to break up my day. So if I'm working on a feature, if I'm doing specific support tickets. But in a lot of ways, I do thrive in the chaos. Like if I see something and I know it's going to take me less than 10 minutes to do, I do it. And I know that it breaks up some workflows sometimes. So like if I'm in a specific workflow, I just take all of those distractions away and focus on what I'm doing. But for me, I really have to like get it done in the moment, or I know I'm going to miss it. I know it's going to fall out of my scope. So if it's an email I need to come back to tomorrow morning, I just hit snooze on Gmail and it comes back in tomorrow morning, right? If it's and I try and do inbox zero, so you're always, keeping your inbox close to zero, right? Like never more than one page.
I need to declare email bankruptcy and start over.
Archive all 2,000. But it was when I did like an email change that I said, okay, this one has to be inbox zero. Like I'm not letting myself get away with it otherwise. But unroll.me for anyone who's tired of like the 400 marketing letters that they're on. go to unroll.me, and they essentially like tell you all of the things that you're subscribed to, and
nice.
you can unsubscribe from all.
I'm gonna do that tonight.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like, and they'll tell you like periodically, you've got 126 new things that you're subscribed to. I was like, what?
When did I do that?
When did that happen?
That's funny.
Yeah, but it adds up over time, and then it's like that's 15 emails that you're throwing in the trash every morning.
Right.
Just take that out of your workflow.
Yeah. Because I'm always like signing up like, oh, this would be a good idea. Like I could read this for 2 minutes in the morning, and then you get 100 of those. And, so the startup entrepreneurial scene here in Wichita, where would you say that's at? Do you think it's a good time or maybe easier or harder in Wichita than somewhere else? Where is the entrepreneur startup space right now?
Yeah, that's it's interesting. So I really started getting involved kind of after the first wave of leaders in this entrepreneurial ecosystem. So like the Jake Waitmans of the world, the Seth Edders of the world that were leading the entrepreneurial ecosystem, getting 1 million cups started, and kind of driving that. And so I came in right as they were kind of on the tail end a couple of years ago here in Wichita. And it's made leaps and bounds in some ways here in Wichita, and then kind of backtracked on in others. So I think if you're a company here in Wichita, or you're an entrepreneur looking to get connected, some of the best things that you can do is just go to the events that we do have, right? It's not a Boston, it's not a New York, it's not a San Francisco where there's literally something every single night, right? There's a dozen things a year, right? Or there's maybe 3 or 4 things a month. Like Startup Grind, 1 million cups. We do some of the Shift conferences with Flagship, Kansas.tech, the new tech council here. So especially if you're in tech, which is really all that I could speak to, I would say just get involved, get to know some of the other startups that have been in this space and have either had success or are still going or have failed, and just try and talk to the founders, try and talk to the people who are in the trenches every single day. I think that's where you get the most value, especially for the technology ones, because we're not like San Francisco, where we've had so many tech startups and those engineers and those business leaders and those marketers have all had successful exits, and now they can reinvest in companies. And like we're kind of still relying on what I would call outside of tech money. There's a few exceptions to that, but it's people who don't have that intimate connection with tech in the last 5 years, even, because a lot's changed in the last 5 years. And how do we really understand how to value, how to build, how to invest, and how to mentor tech companies in this ecosystem? So my biggest suggestion would be go outside and build relationships outside of this ecosystem as well, and travel, right? Do some traveling. I think the best perspective I ever got was being involved in the Sunshine Coast and Brisbane tech startup ecosystem in Australia. Very different, not Silicon Valley like per se, but they had the same issues with raising capital because it's Australia, not the US. But the technical education, or I guess proficiency of the leaders was very different to here. I was kind of surprised, to be honest, that they were so far more experienced without having a lot of the same tech startups. And I think it's because they're able to work for companies who adopted a lot of those principles early. We've got some interesting, if you're pulling talent from this ecosystem, think about the companies off the top of your head that you'd be pulling tech talent from, and like, how do they operate internally? So you either take them from school, you take them from a company in this city that has already got tech talent, or you bring them from out of Wichita, either remote or bring them into live here. And really there's a few diamonds in the rough, but the most experienced talent I think that you're going to have, other than our team, because we kind of sucked up some of the diamonds in the rough here, is going to be ones who have built companies elsewhere and have come back to Wichita. Because they get the experience from working for a San Francisco company, and then they can come back, or it doesn't have to be San Francisco, but like Chicago, Boston, like they work for a tech company, they know the game, like they understand what that feels like, and it's not a big corporate, long-term, slow-moving thing. It's like we went from 15 people in the office to 150 in 2 years. We went from small to large. We raised a bunch of capital, and we were kind of the sweetheart of an Austin ecosystem. And then all of a sudden, you can add tons of value in ecosystems that haven't experienced that. So it's something that I learn every single day.
Sure.
I'm fortunate enough to have some connections outside of this ecosystem that I can lean on when I have questions or need some help on something. But,
I think
we're all learning.
Right. Yeah, I think I found just a few of the companies here in town have been super helpful and to talk to. I've interviewed you now, Steven Warner, Jacob Wayman. I met Trevor Cross. I met Jocelyn with TU Auto. Just a lot of those different people, and everyone's always like, if you need anything, let me know. And everybody's willing to take time, and it's really cool to.
Well, and I think I know all of those people, and I know that it's something that we're all passionate about is being able to give 15 minutes here, an hour there to say I hope that this hour saves you 10 because I know how hard it was for us to grind through this.
Right.
And if we can just save you a few, if we can save you some time, that's actually better for this entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
Because the reality in a tech ecosystem, you need talent, and it's not just engineering talent. It's marketing talent. It's leadership. How do you identify good products? How do you keep them small enough to make market sense and monetize?
Right.
The only way that you retain that is if you have enough startups coming up the pipeline. So when one of these companies goes under, everyone kind of uses an S&T example here in town, and it was really kind of a terrible situation. But the reality is, we got a ton of amazing engineers out of that.
Yeah.
Right. We had engineers who went from kind of I'm not sure, I'm kind of green, and even some good experienced engineers, and they were able to help grow over that period of time to where their talents coming into the startup ecosystem super valuable.
Sure.
And so we've even seen the benefit of that.
Yeah.
Our engineers actually came from S&T. They're fantastic. They know how to work under deadlines. They know how to they know kind of the bad side of things too.
Yeah.
So it's also interesting to hear some of those perspectives and what was really good about the technology there, and see how to develop advanced things that there's not a ton of companies that I know about here in Wichita that are doing that. And
just to clear, S&T is
S&T was a startup that raised a lot of money here in this ecosystem, and they ended up going bankrupt and owed about $45 million, and so it was a big blow up in the tech ecosystem here in Wichita, and big black eye for a while.
Right.
But the reality is, the more of those companies that you have, there's going to be ones that fail, the majority of them, and there's going to be a few that succeed or do okay. And how can you help keep that talent here?
Yeah.
And the only way you keep that talent here is to have the next cohort, the next group of people coming up, so that if somebody that company burns out, or it fails for whatever reason, or they to market, or just didn't get the adoption they wanted, then you can bring that back around and bring some experience into the younger companies to help guide and mentor them day to day and build that company to add value to those founders. So I think always
that's really interesting.
knowing that's what happened in Boulder, that's what happened in San Francisco. They've just been doing it for 70 years, and we've been doing it for 7.
Right.
So
pretty early, pretty young.
Yeah. So young but hopeful.
Yeah, for sure. So now I just have some questions that I've kind of ripped off from some other podcasts.
Sure.
I'm a big Tim Ferriss fan, Joe Rogan.
There you go.
All the how that goes. So what is something you often recommend to people? So it could be a book, a podcast, anything like that.
I love listening to Jason Calacanis' podcast, This Week in Startups.
Okay.
I think he creates some amazing value, and especially if you've never kind of listened to people talk about investing and talk about term sheets and all of that. If you're really new and you want to be a founder or CEO or a co-founder, listen to at least, 24 of those podcasts.
Sure.
And then start listening, what are the things that I don't know here, and I'll go learn that. I think it's a great foundational piece to start thinking about how to build companies, how to hold good culture and good value within companies, and where can you go wrong with product? because he does a lot of different things between guests on the podcast or just office hours with founders, and they give him a 1 minute pitch, and then he like kind of rips them apart or praises some of the things, and it's really helpful.
Interesting. Okay, I've listened to This Week in Tech.
Yeah.
I think it must be related, but I've heard his name, and I think it was on that. So interesting. Do you have a favorite failure in any aspect of your life? So you've had a lot of ventures, so.
My favorite failure. Let's see which one is my favorite failure. I would say early on, when I was first getting into entrepreneurship, actually it was probably right before I decided to do like, freelance web design stuff. I had a business relationship which I lost about $7,000, which young kid, that's a lot of money, right? I learned that having the right co-founder is very, very important. Match on values and culture, and founders and co-founders, especially when it comes to who's getting paid and why do they need to get paid in a relationship, you have to be very open and transparent around that from day one. Right. And I was in a naive situation, and I just had to learn the hard way that I was essentially going to pay somebody to not do anything, and it was my money on the line, and I thought they had more expertise and business acumen than they did, but I didn't know that.
Right. And
so I think losing that money taught me to truly appreciate, even for my own respect, like when I'm asking for something from anybody, like knowing how to value that relationship and see what value am I bringing to the table, and always trying to know that will produce more value than I'm asking for in return. And I think if you operate from that mindset, it really helps anchor you to some really good core qualities in business. And generally works out if you're thinking about that.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's good advice, because I know, just friends of starting stuff and trying to decide who do I want to work with. Is it your brother or your friend, or what that looks like? So.
And I think taking the time to make the decision is important. So I've worked with friends, I've worked with family. Sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. I think it's just setting the right expectations and knowing that contracts exist for a reason, and they're not to screw somebody over. It's to set expectations and to clearly communicate. And so read your contracts. Right? Write your contracts. Have a lawyer write your contracts. Right? Understand exactly what you're getting into, and if you have questions, ask questions. If you can't make the decision, if they give you an ultimatum, might not be the right deal. So, and then also I think for startups in particular, know how to value yourself. There's a little bit of guesswork art to valuation. We don't always get it right. But understand if somebody wants to take 40 to 60% of your company in round one, you're not an investable company after that, and know what kind of path you want that company to take. There's a real art to that, and we just don't have a lot of good education in this market around that. So you have to kind of go and dig on the internet and watch how do some of the Silicon Valley companies do that if you're going to raise capital. And then it's not your money, so treat it like it's someone else's money. Be respectful with it, and just drive value. Pay it back.
What is your definition of success?
Oh yeah. Yes, I think that success is truly being able to operate in the skills and the talents that you're skilled and talented in, and that brings you joy, right? So being self-aware enough to say, I love entrepreneurship because I get to work with other founders, I get to work with team members, and I get to help realize my own true value and inspire myself, but also be inspired by others and help inspire others to realize this is the type of company I could build, or this is the type of product that could bring value to these creators around the world. And so I love being in startups and the entrepreneurial ecosystem because I can I can literally spend hours just talking with others about things that I've learned the hard way or stumbled into luckily, and it's a lot of fun to hear awesome ideas from creative people and see them realize their true potential in those ideas.
That's really cool. Do you have a life motto that you live by, or what's some great advice you received?
Well, my life motto is really kind of anchoring myself and inspiring others to realize their true potential, their true value. And then I think the best advice, probably the most, so I'm going to give you another Gary Vee quote here. But it was honestly one of the things that I heard from Gary that threw me off my rocker a little bit, because it's such an audacious quote, but it's a great one, which is, you're going to die, right? And so when you really think about that statement, like, you're going to die, so what are you going to do between now and then? Are you going to complain? Are you going to produce? Are you going to create? Or are you going to consume? You know, what are you going to do between now and then? And there's a lot of things we can do, and we're living in a very fortunate age in which a lot of that can be entertainment, a lot of that can be just sitting around, or it could be hard work, or a mixture of the both.
Right.
But what, for you personally, what are you going to do with that statement? And what does that mean to you? Are you scared of death? Are you going to embrace it? How do you deal with it? I mean, there's a lot that you can go into. It's just like, you're going to die.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh man, okay. So.
Yeah, no doubt. What is a habit that you developed over the past few years that's most improved your life?
Turning email notifications off on any mobile device has been huge, and then just living by the calendar, to be honest. My wife and I are good at that some weeks and bad at it other weeks.
Are you synced up? So
I do my best to stay synced up, and she likes writing things down a lot more, and so like we've got to work through that. But so I mean, she's been awesome at getting her stuff on the calendar and making sure that I know where she's going to be. But you know, it just has kind of come to the point where it's like, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. And you know, she gives me a hard time because like, she's like, well, if it's on the calendar, it still might not exist, because remember that meeting that you weren't supposed to have, like, you canceled the meeting, you rescheduled it, and then you still showed up to the calendar event that you didn't reschedule. So it's like, it happens. But live by the calendar. It allows me to just look and see what's next and go to it and just free up brain space the rest of the day.
Sure. What is your favorite part of Wichita, or a hidden gem in Wichita?
Ooh, a hidden gem in Wichita. Having spent time in the specialty coffee industry in Australia, so we lived there for 3 months, and we're kind of exploring if we were going to move there or not. I went from knowing nothing and drinking dirt water on a farm to like being a super coffee snob because of just, you're in a roaster every day and one of the best coffee cultures in the world. And I would say that the best coffee that I've had in Wichita, which is our guilty pleasure as a couple, is at Little Lion, which is an ice cream store. But Ian used to be the head roaster over at Reverie in the early days, and has really crafted excellent training for his baristas, but then also source quality coffee from Madcap. And I would say that's like, if you want to know what coffee in the rest of the world kind of should taste like high quality stuff, I would say Little Lion does a very good job at all the aspects, right? Sourcing great coffee, then training their people to like make that coffee really well every single time, and then just engaging around their store. So
that's really cool.
I love Little Lion.
I've been there a couple times, but I have not had their coffee yet, so I'll have to check it out. Is there anything you wish Wichita had that it does not have, or what would you improve about Wichita?
I would improve flight access through the airport. And that really only happens by people here flying more.
Like the Fly Wichita campaign, so I know they're pushing for it. So
I worked with Valerie over there. We got to share some more of our travel journeys actually through, I think it was their July Air magazine.
That's awesome.
Which was a lot of fun. But I think I would love to see more direct access. Selfishly, I'd love to have a nonstop flight to LA, because then it's like Wichita to LA to Australia.
Right.
That'd
be pretty cool.
It's literally 2 flights, and we're there, instead of the 3 or 4 that it takes now. But I think also, I wish Wichita had more of a connection through like a sister city for example,
Sure.
that fostered more. I mean, we have this big idea that we need to retain talent and we need to keep people here, which is absolutely true. But I think the other thing that we need to do is we need to learn how to share what we do have and our connection, our roots, our history, bring in new talent.
Yeah.
Bring in people from outside of Wichita here and show them why, everything from the cost of living, which you hear a lot of,
right.
being cheaper than other places, but also like the amazing food culture that we have here,
right.
and some of the arts that are really popping up more and more now, and inspiring others to bring kind of those connections here, and maybe they have a company that sells things online all around the world, and that those dollars can come into the Wichita
sure.
ecosystem instead of somewhere else. So I think this sister city idea, especially internationally, would be really cool.
Yeah.
To connect with people here leaving and coming back, but experiencing some of the world, and then those who have experienced other places coming here and giving us more diversity and culture.
Yeah, that's really cool. Last question, what does Wichita mean to you?
Well, growing up, Wichita was always the place to go if you wanted to shop at Sam's or go see a movie, hang out at the mall. And I think it always was this like seemingly distant backyard city that I didn't spend a lot of time in because, to be quite frank, like growing up or even early entrepreneurial years, like I didn't see them putting much value into me as an entrepreneur. And there was really just the wrong mindset. And so having the opportunity, I mean, when I was doing freelance web design, I did web design all over the world for Norway, Canada, UK, Jersey to California to Florida, New Mexico, like all over the place. And it wasn't until I realized that, there is an opportunity for me to gain value from my own backyard. And I think making the decision to start to seek others out instead of waiting for people to seek me out, and just learn from them, right? Like the idea to say, there's something I can learn from amazing people here in town. I should stop being bitter about the things that they haven't given me, and just go and see how I can bring them value. Sure. And I think that wake up call was good, to just say, all right, like I love Wichita now because it is a city of opportunity. And I think the best way I could describe it is it's almost like that startup that is just on the cusp of like exploding into growth and amazing things happening right on that catalyst and that cusp. And it feels like, if there's just 10 more people in the city who are really engaged, or 10 more cool startups, like all of a sudden now we start to boom and like see some real snowball effect in this whole place. So it feels like you're on the first. It feels like you're on that fresh wave, that cusp of innovation, and that energy is building and building. And we've still got our flaws, but I think from a startup ecosystem standpoint, it's just going to take a couple startup teams who buckle down and like build a company that's worth talking about and worth getting excited about, and add more value back into this community first. It's like give, then take. And I think as founders sometimes we get frustrated because like you feel like you're giving into the ecosystem instead of giving back. But really it's just the hard work. It's the exercise of just doing it because you enjoy doing it. And if you don't enjoy giving, then it's probably not the right ecosystem for you.
Sure.
But
I love it. That's awesome.
I think Wichita is becoming more of an example for me to say, like, there's amazing people that give way more than they need to here. And those are the ones that you want to find and connect with. Like all the startups that we've mentioned so far.
Oh yeah, 100%. Awesome. Well, that's all I got, man. I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time. I went a little longer than I thought, but I love it. I mean, I could keep talking to you for hours. So.
Yeah, no. I mean, I would say for us, we're excited to be here. We've had a lot of people tell us that we should be here, we should go into a different ecosystem, but I love it here. And I want to raise a family here and have this be the city that we're connected to, and then see my kids grow up, being part of the ecosystem. Even though we do live outside of town, like we spend probably more of our time in town than outside of town, and that's really fun. So I appreciate you having me a part of this. It's going to be fun to see how this podcast continues to grow. And if you're not listening to it, I guess you are. If you're listening to this,
maybe they're reading it.
Maybe they're reading it. If you're seeing these captions, listen to this podcast in full. Now you have to go and clip that.
Yeah, I'll clip it, run it through quick.
Yeah,
there we go.
Put
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool, man. I really appreciate it, and we'll get this out there, and hopefully we can inspire some people in Wichita.
Thanks, Landon.
Thanks, Jason.